Quick housekeeping. Welcome to the Microsoft office in Adelaide. There are toilets outside of the front door on your right, second hallway. Emergency exits just right off the escalators, elevators. 12 flights of stairs, so in case of emergency, meeting down there in the southwestern corner of the square. Quick welcome and acknowledgement of country, acknowledging that we're meeting here on the lands of the Kaurna people. We'd like to extend our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So welcome to the Adelaide Microsoft IT Pro Community Meetup of June in 2025. It's always a mouthful. Apologies from Shahan. He's feeling a bit crook, so he is attending online. I'm Andrew Young, if you haven't met me before. Modern Work Specialist at Data, also a Microsoft Security MVP. Feel free to reach out and connect on LinkedIn for stuff. We'll share these links out in the show notes afterwards. So if you want to take a photo, I'll go back. It won't let me go back. All right, well, you got my name. Shahan, if you're on the call, he's a identity access management and
I'm here.
I'll let you go.
Yeah. Hi all. Sorry I couldn't be there today in person. Not well. But yeah, I'm Shahan, MVP in security, specializing in Microsoft Intune and Defender, identity and access management, and I'm an architect in the same areas, working for Bastion Technology Services, and emsroute.com, my blog site, and you can find me in the LinkedIn as well. This is my QR code. So happy to be connected.
Yeah, apologies for the audio. I believe that's getting sorted soon for those in room. Okay, and again, thanks to our sponsors, Microsoft, Systematech IT Consulting for running the group from day one, I believe, or the Meetup group from day one. Dicker for letting me be here. Sometimes there's swag, and for M360 Senpai. That's my blog. Plus the food and drink out there. That's expensive by this guy. He doesn't pay me though. All right. So May happened, and I'd like to cycle between charitable events. So the May 50K is part of Multiple Sclerosis Australia's fundraising event. So throughout the month of May, there is a online virtual challenge or event where you can walk, run, or move 50 kilometers. I've gone 100 just to double up because it suggested, hey, based on what you did last year, you can double up. And also like fundraising goals and all that. But it's all about raising awareness, raising funds for the research and treatment of MS. QR code's up there. The charity page is still open till the end of the month. So if you feel free to drop whatever amount, I think anything above $2 is tax deductible. All right. We'll jump into what's new and what's coming before we get to our guest speaker content. But Windows 10 end of support. It's coming 14th of October. If you have not got a plan in place, do that. Run out and quickly buy yourself a new computer or ask your provider to give you some advice and map out what you're going to do, because migrating to Windows 11 or getting a new fleet of devices might be the next practical step. There will be extended security updates. Of course, there'll be an additional charge, and that only lasts for 3 years. So you will need to eventually move off of Windows 10. There was the Copilot user group yesterday, so I don't know if anyone attended that, but you would have noticed that the Copilot app has had an update. So if you are using any Windows 11, I think current build, you should get the Copilot app, and you would notice that they've moved everything to the left-hand side now. All your chats, your agents, your history, and so on. There's also something called Notebook in there as well. If you've seen or heard or played with Google's version, so they've got Notebook LM. It's a very similar concept. It's another workspace where you start throwing in files and documents and links, and the Copilot experience is based on whatever's inside that notebook. There's also the audio recap, so you've seen people create effectively a podcast with some virtual voices based on that content you've thrown in there. So that's either in your tenant or it's rolling out now to people around the world. Generally, if you've got a license, you should see also these two guys. So there's a researcher and an analyst agent. So these are based on OpenAI's deep research and O3 reasoning models. So they do a bit more work, whereas if you talk to Copilot normally, it's a very brief interaction. It's give me 10 seconds, here's the answer. Whereas these ones, they spend 10 minutes at minimum for the researcher to actually go out and do the research for you. And it comes back with a full-blown report. It's like 20 pages around the content that you've asked for. And the analyst agent looks over, say you've got data in Excel, and it will go through that, generate all of this Python code to then give you deeper insights and analytics and so on. And it does give you some heat mapping at the end. So cool stuff happening. There's more and more agents coming, but we won't delve on agents too much because that's outside of an IT pro's kind of remit, I guess. But there is some amount of governance required. So part of the announcements from Microsoft Build a couple of weeks back, we have something called Microsoft Entra Agent ID. So whenever you create an agent using Copilot Studio, Entra ID will automatically create an ID for that agent. A bit small there, and what that means is you can now start using that identity as part of your conditional access policies. So yes, your users have access to your data, but what is that agent doing? So if it tapped into this data source, is that a secure connection? Is what it's doing, safe? It's also another way of having audit logging. So you can see, this agent did this when, whereas before you wouldn't have that information. And the other thing is when you share an agent to another company or an external tenant, that same identity is used. It's the one agent that you maintain and develop, whereas it's shared out to other tenants. They don't need to redevelop everything or provide updates to 20 different places. It's just a single source there. So many things coming here. That's from the Entra space. Everybody's favorite is information protection, data security, governance, risk, and so on. So Microsoft Purview is the compliance product. DSPM, so data security posture management. Not DSPM for AI, which is a slightly different beast. The one for AI actually does insights and looks over your M365 environment for when you're using AI and Copilot and suggests certain policies that you can put in place. Whereas DSPM is across your entire data estate. So you've got other silos here, multi-cloud instances, and it will give you the same kind of insights across all the data, whether there's any risk involved or if you've protected everything, I guess. And it also taps into Security Copilot. We all love licensing and billing and paying for things. They've introduced pay-as-you-go, so consumption-based billing on some of these features here. So audit, communication, compliance, e-discovery, and insider risk management, all around Copilot or AI-related stuff. I think e-discovery piece, it's more around additional storage of data. So Microsoft is starting to charge more for storage because in the past we've just been taking advantage of that and we're not paying for all that data, and they're slowly clawing it back, either through is it a retention related thing or is it do we just up the pricing, or now we've seen things like Stream moving out of this separate imaginary storage warehouse and it's now in your SharePoint, so it's eating into your quotas. So this is what they're doing in this space, is making go consumption billing. If you care about data lifecycle, retention policy have expanded the locations you can choose, and it's more for expanding the support for Copilot and AI apps. It's not on there, but before Teams chats and Copilot interactions were in the same thing, and they split those out now. So you have separately, I'm tracking just Teams chat history and then Copilot interactions and so on. And we can't get away from it as agents. There's more agents coming. This is for the security Copilot side of things, but it's more around the triaging of data loss prevention and insider risk management alerts. Get to you soon, Shahan. Actually, if you want to take this one.
Yes. So this is from Intune. Can you hear me well, Andrew?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is from Microsoft Intune. So Microsoft Intune got something called multiple administrative approvals. Before you do something administrative, someone needs to approve. So it's more like a workflow, and everything will get audited. So far, applications and scripts. So anything to do with the applications and scripts can be creation, deletion, or editing. Needs to go through an approval process. So they have added access policies as well. So that means those approval policies will get audited and will go through another level of approval before you do anything for those policies. So that's something new that's been added. Of course, that's coming with an additional add-on for the standard Intune license plan 1. Or if you go with the Intune suite, then this feature is available by default as well.
Yeah, that's right. I think it also is an extra layer of defense. If one Intune admin gets compromised, you've got other admins in place to say, no, we're not letting that happen, because they might be going around and wiping all your devices, right? If you haven't got the gates in front of that, it may just happen in all your devices, something get wiped. So it's very important having that extra layer of defense there. And obviously there's justification. So you can, if it is a legitimate request to change a certain policy, then that's where it will show up and the other admins can approve it. Screenshot courtesy of Rajwal. Desai. More agents. So Intune's getting an agent around vulnerability remediation, and there's a lot of prerequisites, a lot of licensing. You need Security Copilot, obviously, but also vulnerability management and the Intune suite licensing. Just announced today, there's going to be a new video series on Intune. So that's the link to it, but it'll be dropping on YouTube and all the other platforms shortly. I'll drop the link in the notes afterwards. Defender for Office 365, automatic remediation of malicious messages in Automated Investigation and Response, or AIR, as it's commonly known as, is now generally available, more for helping out your security operations teams to remediate those threats quicker and give you better protection. Effectively, it is triaging those emails and it's automatically going through them, and it detects a cluster of bad emails or similar emails that have level of indicators of compromise. It'll go through and start processing and blocking and doing all that it needs to do, ensuring that the user is safe. Throw it back to you, Shahan.
Yeah. So this is for everyone who's actually using Defender, specifically ASR, or attack surface reduction rules. So there are, I think at the moment 19 rules which are available to set up by using Defender XDR. So these are just blocking, behaving proactively rather than just reactive as an antivirus. So what this does basically, so new 2 rules that went on GA, general availability recently. They were all public preview recent as well. So they were like, you can block rebooting the machine in safe mode by using commands. So that's available, and you can pretty much enable in the block mode without any problems. And also copying or impersonating any other system tools from a different machine and onto the Windows machine or the server and run or duplicate those system tools is now prohibited by using these rules. So they are available as a part of the ASR rules. Of course, you can do exemptions as well if you want to. It's a per rule sort of a exemption, but these 2 rules are now in GA. Yes, if you want to hit next, Andrew. Yeah, so configuration management, again, in the Defender XDR, that's where you push all your security policies to your devices from Defender XDR itself or by using Microsoft Intune. The problem is there are same settings coming from a few different places. It can be from your config manager, your GPOs, Defender related GPOs, or from the Defender XDR and Intune. So different places, same set of policies, and it can get conflicts as well. So whenever there's an incident related to a device, you can now go into the device and see what's the effective setting and where it's coming from and what's the value of that. And you can see whether it's basically set up in the intended way or if it's not set up, and things like that. So that will be useful when you're doing your incident management, as well as finding out where the root cause is for a device with regards to a policy. So if you press next, Andrew, you'll see a snippet of the. Yeah, so if you see the effective value, you can see what's the actual value for that setting, as well as configured by local admin default, tamper protection, like a policy, basically where it's coming from. So yeah, very easily you can find out rather than going through all those settings or systems, like where it's actually enforcing from. Yeah.
Cool, thanks for that. But yeah, I think that's more around the whole providing visibility across all the devices or identities that you're protecting. Here's some more security training stuff for you. Microsoft have these extensive blog posts per product that's listed there, and curated learning paths. There is self kind of paced learning, and then there's an assessment at the end. So you get a certificate of completion if you go through it all. If you're interested, there's also a free ebook around cloud native app protection policies. And there's NinjaCat. All right, Microsoft Learn. All right. I don't know if there's any partners in the room, but there is a new specialization coming for Microsoft partners. It is the Microsoft Copilot specialization. So this is available for those that already have modern work or business application solution partner designations. And it is a specialization tiered thing. So the requirements are going to be very high. So I believe it is 1,000 monthly active user growth in trailing 12 months, 5 net new customers using Copilot. And in terms of skilling, you're going to need, I think it's at least 4 people that have the Microsoft 365 admin certificate. And there's a couple of applied skills involved. And I think that's, yeah, and there's the customer success piece at the end. So you've got these showcases, you've done this with these customers here. There's an agent and an agent that's deployed as part of a solution, and this is the impact and so on. So that's the 2-minute rundown of what it is. But I popped up first. One of the new applied skills there is the Microsoft Copilot Studio creating agents. So that's one of the 2 applied skills required for that specialization. The other one is around security and compliance in setting up your M365 tenant. So a couple of other things there as well. So there's identities and access management with Microsoft Entra, and learning programming in C#. Over on the left there, AI Skills Fest is over. So that was 50 days of AI learning around the world. We saw last month over here that Microsoft actually achieved a Guinness World Record of having the most people within 24 hours taking an online AI course. So that was, I forget the numbers now, I think it was 126,000 plus people around the world took part in that. Yeah, cool. So Microsoft Learn student ambassadors. So staring at the education-related people in the room. So this is kind of the little brother to the MVP program. So the most valuable professionals. The student ambassadors, they come in and they do very similar things. It's all about the community. So the writing's a bit small, but there is a Discord server. You join it. There are some entry benefits for joining the program, but during the course of becoming an ambassador, there are some things you can run. So user groups, community events, hackathons, and so on. And if you meet a certain threshold of activities within that period, you get upgraded to a beta student ambassador, and so on. So once you've done even more work in that space of the tech community and sharing and fostering that growth mindset, you get awarded the gold student ambassador, and that's a lot of stuff happens from then on. You get sent some swag, you get direct access to an MVP for mentorship, and it actually gives you a foot in the door to become an MVP yourself. So good for those aiming for a career in IT, where you really like one of the products that Microsoft has, and you want to start getting more recognition for that. It would look good in your CV. Just saying. So that's that piece. There is also a Microsoft Student Accelerator that Michelle Sanford runs across the ANZ. Have been trying to get something to happen in Adelaide, but we need to find a reason for her to come down. But yeah, they do them in Perth, Melbourne, Auckland, I think. But it's more geared for student communities as well. Talking of community, these are the other user groups that we have on in Adelaide. Yep, just a few. So we're all in the Meetup app. But generally, there should be one of each technology area on the board there. What's coming? We've got messed up the order, but currently there's a secure AI-driven productivity bootcamp, which should be wrapping up now. Partners in the room, there's the go-to-market kickoff event in July, which probably replaces Inspire. And there's a few developer events happening in September, November, December. Obviously, there's Microsoft Ignite in November as well. And there's a Dfinity conference in December, and that's for all the Fabric data fiends out there. So yeah, don't worry, I'll send these links out so you can check those out afterwards. It's coming up for the user group. We've got Ben Teo coming back again to talk about Copilot adoption. And then in August, desired state configuration for M365, Anthony Porter. And yeah, I think the rest of the year is still kind of a TBC, TBA. But yeah, if you're keen for certain topics, or if you want to present at the user group, there's a form, or hit us up on whatever medium and say what you want to hear about, or if you want to present, we can make it happen. And with that, right. If you hadn't known yet, we keep plugging it every month, but we have started a podcast. It is Out of Band, a Microsoft security podcast, and it has myself, Shahan, and Anthony Porter as hosts. And we just wrapped up recording that episode last night, so that should go live some point next week. Winks at Shahan. But yeah, you'll catch us on the usual mediums of YouTube, Spotify, Pods, whatever they're called, QR code to LinkedIn page, and so on. All right, so we're here today for our guest speaker, Skye Davis. I will hand over the floor to you now, and you can do the honor of introducing yourself better.
Hi, everyone. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Skye. And yes, this is actually my real job title. I'm the threat hunter at University of South Australia. So currently I'm seconded into that role. So, and sorry about my voice, I've been sick, so I'll do my best today. But yeah, I've been seconded into a threat hunter role, but my substantive position is endpoint security lead. So basically I live in places like Intune and CrowdStrike and stuff like that. So while I certainly do use a lot of Microsoft technologies, like our main identity stack at University of South Australia is like Entra ID and all that sort of stuff, and a lot of our servers are Windows. I personally use a Mac. I'm not the biggest Microsoft nerd ever, but I definitely do use a fair share of my Microsoft products. Upwards. Okay. So I want to talk about threat intelligence and how to integrate threat intelligence today. And everyone's probably like, well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people are probably like, what is threat intelligence? Right? I mean, before I started doing Threat Hunter, I was not really sure what that meant either. It sort of sounds self-explanatory, but it's a little bit more complicated than what it might seem. Just a little bit on myself first, real quick. So, threat hunter, cool. Endpoint security lead, awesome. Security automation specialist, so I do a lot of automation stuff, right? So like I really hate like redundant jobs and like mundane crap that people have to do every single morning. You know, like it's such a waste of time when there's so many ways to automate things nowadays. So I really love automating stuff, sometimes to a fault. I'm also a I'm a working mum, so I've got like a 10-month-old kid. So that just, you know, adds to the, am I tired? Oh yeah, I'm tired. And yeah, I'm a bit of a CrowdStrike diehard. So lately I haven't really been spending a huge amount of time in CrowdStrike, but usually I spend a lot of time in CrowdStrike. Can you? All right. So what is a threat hunter? Well, a threat hunter is basically somebody that uses threat intelligence information, right? So, which is, you know, comes from a variety of different sources. We'll go into that. To specifically applies that information against the environment that they're responsible for, right? So if you're a IT admin, right, you've got an environment that you're responsible for. The threat hunter's role, and it really only exists in big organizations, right? You're not going to be having a threat hunter in a 50-man outfit. The threat hunter's role is basically just to look over the environment and make sure that, you know, we're as secure as we possibly can be against the threats as they evolve out there, right? So two of the things that are common responsibilities for a threat hunter is the integration of intelligence feeds, which is actually what I'm talking about today. And it's really also important that you have knowledge of security platforms. It's not only like that you have to do the integration of intelligence feeds and things like that, but you need to know about it. You need to understand what that means. And I'm going to explain it. And you also need knowledge of security platforms and concepts, right? And not just security platforms, but like general technology as well. I don't even know what I'm pointing it at. I pointed at this thing. All right. Anyway, so some concepts that you might be familiar with, like theme. So does everyone heard of a theme before? I hope so. Yeah. SOAR, you know, general identity. So like, you know, what identity platforms are, what an identity actually is. Privileged access management, log management, endpoint security concepts, firewall and network security. And that's just some. Like that's not even all of them. You know, it's a fairly senior role. Like I'm pretty young, so, but you know, I've been in IT for like 10 years, which is a really long time for me. So you do need to have a fair amount of experience before you get into something like this. But I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff that's actually going to be useful for you to take away anyway, even if you're not in a senior role. And there's just a bit of terminology that I'm going to make sure that you guys walk away with. So I want to make sure that everyone knows what a theme is by the end of this. I want to make sure that everyone knows what a SOAR is by the end of this. I want to make sure that everyone has a clear understanding of threat intelligence and what that is before we finish up. And I want everyone to understand what an API is and have a bit of an understanding about what's, you know, how they're useful in this context. So with threat intelligence, and like, honestly, I'm not super happy with the way that this slideshow turned out visually. You know, it could be better, but I lost a few days in bed being sick, so I kind of had to rush it a little bit. But it's okay, we'll get there. So what is threat intelligence? Well, what it really boils down to is it's just information that relates to observed malicious activity, right? So it can come from all sorts of different places, right? But That's all it is. It's information coming from wherever about, hey, I saw this happen. Okay? So, and it can come in different forms, as you can imagine. So, threat intelligence type 1, so it's not officially like broken down into 2 different types. I've just done that for the sake of, like this presentation. But the first type is kind of like informational. Okay, it's not technical information that's actually useful. It's not something you can feed into a system. It's things like comments, people putting up information about this Trojan, some stats, a link to an article, things like that, that can and does often feed through threat intelligence feeds. The good stuff is also the bad stuff. So it's the type 2 that I'm talking about here, which is actual technical data that can be used, right? So you've got a host name, and this is actually straight out of a threat intelligence source, by the way, sanitized links and all that sort of stuff. But I figured why not use real data instead of making it up. So, this is exactly the thing that'll come through though. So you've got, so that's APM. So, you've got host names, IP addresses, you've got full-blown URLs, you've got different kinds of hashes. That's not even exhaustive. There's other little bits and pieces that can come through as well, but those are the main ones that you would worry about. That was supposed to be part of this transition group. Obviously, that didn't get captured. But so using intelligence. All right. So when I said that intelligence can come from a whole bunch of different places, you're probably like, okay, cool. Where? Right? You just, where is it coming from? The guy on the street? No. It's coming from places that actually maintain services for threat intelligence. Right. So I've just collected a few here. So there is a Microsoft Defender threat intelligence feed. Right, and you can use that threat intelligence feed and feed that out into other platforms. But there's also things like Cisco Talos, IBM X-Force, the ACSC has threat intelligence. CrowdStrike has the threat intelligence. Flashpoint is one that we use, and Mimecast. But there's others as well. And since we're talking about actually using intelligence, what do you do with that intelligence? Well, you feed it into different platforms, right? So you might take some hashes from Cisco Talos, feed them into your EDR and XDR, and say, hey, if you see that hash, block it. Yeah? I mean, Windows Defender or Microsoft Defender, for example, is going to have a bunch of intelligence built into it, right? But if you don't want to solely rely on that intelligence, there's going to be stuff in these other feeds that doesn't exist in Microsoft Threat Intel. It's going to be a lot of overlap, but there's also going to be stuff that doesn't overlap. Okay? So the more feeds you can have, the better. So, you might take hashes and feed them into your EDR or XDR, block those hashes. You might take domains or IP addresses and feed them into your firewall, right? So you might just have an ACL that gets updated and goes, if you see this IP address, just drop that traffic. Same with domains or whatever, Email gateways, again, if you see mail coming from this IP address, drop it. Identity platforms, if you get any identification requests, authentication requests coming from this IP address, block it. And web application firewalls, similarly with the firewall ACLs, So it's about looking at the threat intelligence coming through, figuring out what's relevant to whatever platform you want to feed it to. Oh, sorry. I'm trying. Yeah, and figuring out what's relevant and feeding it through to the right place. Okay. So with threat intelligence feeds, they don't typically have like native integrations or anything like that, right? So at this point, I've got to a point with you guys where you know what threat intelligence is. You know that you have to feed it into different platforms for it to be useful. But you're maybe at this point thinking, how do I get it from one place to another? Yeah? Logically, that would be the next question. So they don't typically have native plugins. There are a few. So the ACC, which I have a slide on, I think, does have a plugin for Microsoft Sentinel. Right? So you can literally just plug that data straight in. And you can start building rules and stuff around that data. But that's pretty rare. That's not normal. So you start looking at like an integration platform, which would be a SOAR generally. So a SOAR, security orchestration, automation, and response. There's heaps of different solutions to choose from, but there's Microsoft Sentinel, they've got a SOAR, Rapid7, IBM's QRadar, Splunk, even CrowdStrike has its own SOAR now, but it's shit. It's pretty basic. Very basic. It's actually really good if you're doing stuff in CrowdStrike and nothing else, but you wouldn't use it as a dedicated SOAR platform. Not yet, anyway. I want to make sure you guys are paying attention. So, no, that's fine. Okay, hard because it doesn't actually work every time I press a button. Anyway, so one thing I did want to talk about though is that not everyone has a SOAR. SOARs are really expensive, right? So one thing you could actually do is leverage Azure Logic Apps, which is something that I've done, right? I've had a look at it and actually got some cool stuff happening with threat intelligence integration using Logic Apps. Just in the audience here, people that aren't online, has anyone actually played with Logic Apps at all? Is anyone familiar with it? No. So it's basically just like a workflow builder, right? It is, yeah, it is basically Power Automate, but it's in Azure. But it does allow for the creation of workflows that can do CRUD operations. Right, so CRUD operations is something that's a very, very common term, but if you're not familiar, it's basically create, read, update, and delete, which is really all we want to do. We want to create new IOCs in different platforms. We want to read data from threat intelligence sources. We might want to update those IOCs, or we might want to delete those IOCs if they've expired or something like that, right? Sounds perfect. So this is an example that I pulled off the internet. I don't think this is even my stuff. No, it's not. But basically all this workflow does is it's trigger, right? So trigger, something has to kick the workflow off. So you can actually have a schedule, you can have it manual, have a HTTP API, which is what this one's doing, or an email receipt, right? So you can actually send an email to a mailbox and that kicks off the flow. This one is HTTP API. So basically, if you send a specific request to a specific API endpoint, which the system will give you, that kicks it off. So that's good for, having other automation kick off that workflow. Okay. The other ones you can do is like a schedule. So you schedule a lot. Might have something that runs every hour and scrapes threat intelligence sources and feeds them up, or every half an hour or whatever. So then there's conditions. Sorry, I'm starting to run out of breath a little bit, so I'm just going to take breaks. So then there's conditions. So basically, you feed in some logic into this condition, and if it's true, it does this. If it's false, it does that. Pretty simple. It's pretty simple on the surface, but that can get really complicated really quickly, right? And you can have actually like functions and proper logic built into these conditions and all sorts of stuff. You can write functions. It's really, really, really extensible. That's what I mean by advanced logic. So you could even have something in there that probably goes, well, not probably, but definitely you could do this. It goes, if this, then that, but only during this time. Otherwise flip the logic or something, right? Then you've got actions. There's hundreds of them, literally hundreds. But some of the cool ones, or some of the most useful ones, sending emails, integrating with Teams and Slack, so like sending messages into channels, messaging users, stuff like that. This one gets a lot of use, which is interacting with APIs. APIs, right? So when you're dealing with threat intelligence sources, often APIs are the way that they expose that data, right? So you can log into the web page and read it and stuff like that. But if you want to actually integrate it if you want to integrate it at all, really, you need a way to automatically get that data in a way that a machine can manipulate it and send it and do all that sort of stuff. That's where the API comes in. And you can do that with the Logic app. It also has the capability to pass information, right? So it'll pull stuff out of the API, which might come in like the form of like a JSON document, which is just a structured data document. But then the Logic app can actually read that document. So yeah, I thought I skipped one. All right, cool. So I sort of put this together just to sort of explain how I have done this before in a really simplified way. Say I've got a trigger that goes off every hour. It's fully configurable, so you can tell it when. Then the first thing is like an action. It might talk to Talos and say, hey, do you have any new indicators? What have you seen in the last hour? Yeah? And it goes, yeah, actually, I did see some stuff in the last hour. Here it is. And it sends a JSON document. Okay? That feeds into another action, which reads that JSON document and uses a JSON schema, which is basically just a way to interpret that data. Okay? And by the way, you can generate a schema automatically in the Logic app, so don't be scared of that. Not that hard usually. But it basically reads that data and it spits out fields instead of just data, right? So instead of like a big one big document that has, like all of the different information about what it's saying. Yeah, instead of like one big document that's kind of useless, it interprets that and spits out actual fields, right? So from here, you can actually have an action that looks at the field that contains just the hash value, right, and pushes it into Microsoft Defender. Says I've got a SHA-256 hash from Cisco Talos. Can you block it if you see it? Yeah, you can do that. Easy. That'd just be like a post API request into using Graph probably. I don't do it with Microsoft Defender. I don't use Defender, but sorry. So the other thing that you might consider doing, right, if you've got a whole bunch of different feeds coming through, you might consider aggregating those feeds together into one place, right? Which is something that I do. And there's two main ways to do this. There's other options, of course, but these two fairly popular ways to do it. One is called OpenCTI, which is a free open source threat intelligence platform, right? And you can do things like, do reporting and, all that sort of cool stuff. It looks really sexy. It's a nice looking product, and it's free. It's open source, right? The other one is MISP, which is the one I use. It's really ugly. It looks really old. It's kind of clunky, but it's really feature rich. It's kind of the industry standard for this sort of thing, sort of. And it is good. It is actually good, and it's free as well. So either one of these two, you'd probably just stand it up with a Docker container or something. Yeah. But effectively, what you're doing is just, instead of feeding threat intelligence from like Cisco Talos, for example, straight into something, into like your firewall, you feed all of your threat intelligence, like Talos, Flashpoint, Defender threat intelligence, whatever, feed it all into Mist or this, and then feed out from there, right? One of the benefits is, if you actually want to see if something's happened in the environment, or if you are interested in, oh, have I got any intelligence around this URL or this domain or this hash, you can just chuck it straight in here, and if it's on any of your threat intelligence feeds, you'll know, right? Sometimes when I get one of those like scammy text messages that has like a link, I chuck the URL into my Mist server to see if there's any threat intelligence on it, and often there's not. But it's just interesting to see. So the ACST CTIS is something I was just talking about a little bit before. So the Australian Cybersecurity Centre does do threat intelligence, actually quite good threat intel. And there's a plugin for Microsoft Sentinel. It's on their website, so it's easy to get to. So the other thing is, Logic Apps does cost money because it's in Azure. Everything costs money in Azure. So you might not want to use that. You also might not even want to use a SOAR. I get it. I used to work for small business, money's tight, stuff like that. So one thing you could just do is actually just write a script to do it. Like legit, they just write like a Python script or a PowerShell script or something like that, and it can basically do all of the things that Logic Apps can do. It's just it's not as structured and not as pretty, but it works. You can totally do it. All you're really doing is just doing a GET request, cycling through whatever it comes back with once you've passed it, and then feeding it into wherever it's supposed to go. And this is a little screenshot of a script that GitHub Copilot wrote for me, and it worked out of the box. Which leads me on to saying, if you need help with this stuff, it's actually really good at it. It is. Like, I'm not joking. Like, a lot of people are sort of like, oh yeah, like it's very cool, but it's kind of scary, or it's kind of, I don't trust it or whatever. Which is good. It's good to have some healthy skepticism around it, but I've found it really useful with this stuff. It's extremely knowledgeable in a lot of the areas that are useful for this as well. So like a lot of the modern models, like 4.0, 4.1, Claude on it, it's really good, I've found. But Copilot will be, I think that's based on GPT-4 now. Yeah. So, but it's fully aware of the Mist API specification. So you can actually just ask it, I want to do this in Mist. Can you write me an API query to do that? Or a curl command or something, and it will just do it, and it will work because it knows that document has read it. Terminologies. So if I've actually spoken about anything that you're not sure about, you can actually just ask it, what does this mean? Or say, you have an idea around how to use threat intelligence, but you're not sure if it's a valid one. You can totally just ask and see like, oh, I'm thinking of doing this. And it'll be like, yeah, you could do that, but it's kind of pointless. Sometimes I get those responses. Why would you do that? And so, oh, yeah, I suppose that's a good point. When you get down a rabbit hole, like sometimes it's hard to, see the forest for the trees, I suppose. But one thing I did find, if you do use Logic Apps for this or anything else, it's really smart about Logic Apps, right? And when I say it, I mean all of these models were equally useful. you could say, I got this weird error when I did this in Logic Apps, and it tells you what the error means and how to fix it. You can be like, say there's like a schema error, you know, with your JSON parsing or something like that. You go like, here's my JSON, here's my schema. Why doesn't it go together? And it will actually read both of them and tell you why. Did I? No, the AI would say. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it is something stupid like that, right? So if I get stuck, it's sometimes a good place to start. It's not always right. It's not always useful, but often it is. It'll even create schemas for you. So you can do that in Logic App, but if you're not using Logic App or something like that and you just need a schema, you can just be like, here's my JSON, can you create a schema for me? And it'll do it. So, I thought there was 3 dot points there. Oh, you're missing some slides. We're missing 1 slide. And a dot point. I can't even remember what it says, but that's okay. Yeah, anyway, so in summary, threat intelligence, it is an important component to having like an actual mature overall cybersecurity strategy. All right, so it's useful for businesses, organizations of all sizes, right? It just depends on if you've got the resources to actually do it properly. And you have to automate the use of threat intelligence, really. It's not something you can do manually. So you do need to have some knowledge around how to do that. There was some more dot points, but Andrew cut them off. Right under the bus. There was a thank you slide there, but it's gone. So thanks. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. Hello. I guess if there's any questions in the room or online, feel free to unmute and start talking into the room. Yeah, over there.
Thank you for presentation. I just wonder that
Run the mic.
yeah, thank you for your presentation. I just wonder because you use a lot of automation to pull the stuff from the intelligence. How do you deal with the false positive when it's coming in? Do you also automate to check them, or you actually going in and deal with it?
So that's a really good question. And yeah, there are false positives. We do get them. We generally don't check them. So in threat intelligence, there is a field, like this is actually a specific field that says if the source from this piece of threat intelligence is confident enough that you can feed it straight into a system to block it. Okay. Sometimes you'll get threat intelligence come through like a hash or an IP address or something like that. They're like, look, we think this is malicious, but we're really not confident enough for you to feed it and start blocking it categorically. So we do filter on that field. We only feed in stuff that people are actually confident of. But every now and then something slips in and it's not malicious. I'm trying to think of the last time it happened. But effectively, it is a risk you just have to sort of accept or not accept when you're using threat intelligence. It's a risk that you just go, this is going to happen at some point. It's going to feed in a hash or a an IP address or something like that into a system, and it's going to get blocked. You just need to be aware of it and have processes around how you respond to such a thing happening. Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't do that. I haven't. No, I don't have licensing for it.
It's consumption based.
I don't have any money.
It's expensive.
Is it?
Yeah, so you need security security compute units, and depending on how many you spin up, that's how much it's going to cost. So I think initially Microsoft said they recommended 4 of those units, Yeah, it's per minute or per hour consumption based, right? So as soon as you spin that up, you're paying for those units of computation, and just to use the security copilot. So people were saying, "Oh, we'll run up these scripts to turn it on and turn it off, so that we're not paying 24/7,
Yeah.
only paying for what you use." Which you do it with VMs anyway. So if people aren't logging onto servers, you shut them down. Similar with the security copilot, but I do wonder, like, because when you do provision it, it needs to learn, or your threat intelligence. Like, does it forget that each time you turn it off, or does it retain it? I haven't looked too much into it, but I'm sure
Yeah.
there's ways people have looked into it, and
Yeah, I mean that's a huge thing to bring to the table, is to like, do you want to have any kind of AI having that much influence over something that potentially has so much impact on an environment? You know,
it's the other side of the automation, right? So
yeah,
I mean, SOAR has some machine learning in it, I imagine. So you're already
Yeah.
using AI as just a different type of AI.
yeah, but it's but yeah, look, you know, it's pretty rare, is what I'll say though. It's very rare that something will happen. I've only ever seen it happen a few times. We do ingest quite a bit of threat intelligence, and we have a large environment. We've got 10,000 endpoints. You might be aware that UniSA is merging with Adelaide University, so that endpoint count is actually going to double soon, which makes us the largest, for example, the largest CrowdStrike customer in South Australia. So, you know, it's dealing with a large environment, dealing with a lot of threat intelligence data, and it's still something that very rarely happens. So it is just a risk that we accept.
Any more questions?
That was easy. No worries.
Well, I guess that's it. Yep. Yeah. The awkward eye contact. Yeah, thanks, Skye, for coming and presenting this month. We'll have the recording and the links and the notes and everything else available shortly after. I'll make sure that any of those, three-letter acronyms or random terms that we didn't go deeply into are explained, or at least they come up on the video. But yeah, thanks for coming along, and yeah, we will see you next month. It will be back on the Tuesday, the first Tuesday of July. I forget the date exactly, but it'll be first Tuesday, and we'll have Ben Teo talking about Copilot adoption. Yes. The 1st of July. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, for those that are in person, there's still heaps of food and drink outside there, so feel free to imbibe, and we'll keep the conversation going. For those online, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.